Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Dude, I Love That. I'm Liv, and today we are continuing the Summer Throwback Enneagram Series with a movie that I think rocked everybody's summer back in 2014. We're doing The Fault in Our Stars. This is actually like Shailene Woodley week, heads up. So maybe you can guess what movie's coming next. But this freaking movie, dude, I'm not a crier, but this movie wrecks me every single time. I actually just watched it again last night for you so that I could get like a fresh perspective and really like dig into it, you know? And I started laughing because I was crying. Like I was trying to control my tears and they just like kept falling out of my eyeball one by one. And I started laughing because I'm like, this is so unmanageable. It's just like, I was just a complete mess. So, anyways, I took one for the team, cried my eyes out for you, and now we're ready to jump into these types. And I'm actually only typing 3 of the characters because I really wanted to dig in. I wanted to give you several examples and talk about these 3 characters at length because I think this movie does a great job of showing people that are in stressful situations, but they don't take on stressful characteristics, if that makes sense. I'll explain more, but let's go ahead and jump in with Hazel. So, Hazel Grace, she was so fun to type. I have to be honest, because there were several times that I was going back and forth between is she a 4? Is she an 8? Like what's going on with that? And if you listen to previous episodes, 4s and 8s tend to be a struggle for me when it comes to movies because a lot of times they present like one another, even though in real life, you can tell a 4 from an 8. It just seems to be like in pop culture, 8s present very 4ish and 4s present very 8ish. Hazel, I decided, was an 8 wing 9. And by the way, I think she's a social subtype 8 wing 9. I'll go into a little bit more of that in a second, but I am doing both subtypes and tritypes for this episode because we're only doing 3 characters. So why not go all in? And by the way, if you've never heard me talk about subtypes or tritypes, I'll give you a very quick rundown, but I cover these topics in several episodes. The Outer Banks episode, I talk about subtypes. The H2O episode, I talk about tritypes. And I also talk about subtypes in the Aquamarine episode at length. So be sure and check those out. But if you've never heard about them, subtypes, basically, there's 3. There's social, self-preserving, and sexual, which is also called one-to-one. I try and refer to it as one-to-one on here as much as possible so that the episode doesn't get flagged for saying the S word too much. But basically, self-preserving subtypes are going to be focused on their needs, right? So like, let's say they walk into a party. They're going to be focused on where's the food, where's the bathroom, like where can I sit my purse that it's going to be safe, like things like that. The social subtypes are focused on the group at large, right? They're focused on atmosphere, they're focused on everyone and how they impact each other. And then the one-to-one subtype is focused on personal connections between them and another person. So for me, I'm a one-to-one subtype. And so that looks a lot like you can pick up what's going on between you and another person. So hopefully that is a good enough description for you. Again, check out those other episodes. And then for tri-types, so there's 3 triads, right? We've got gut, which is 9, 8, 1. We've got heart, which is 2, 3, 4. Then we've got head, which is 5, 6, 7. And basically your tri-type gives you a fuller overview of who you are as a person, like your unique personality. So you have your main core type. We'll use mine as an example. So I am a type 6, and that is located in the head triad. So my tri-type, I identify most out of the gut triad with a type 8. So we have a 6, then we have an 8. And then from the heart triad, I identify most with a type 4. So then I have a 4. So now my tri-type is 6, 8, 4. And hopefully that is good at describing everything so that we can jump into this episode and take a look at these amazing characters. Okay, so back to Hazel. I think she's an 8 wing 9. I think she's a social subtype. And I actually wrote down a lot of things here because I was just like super into this. So again, I was kind of going back and forth like, is she a 4? Is she an 8? And I feel like I had seen a couple years ago people saying that she was a 4, but I think she's a 4 in her tri-type, and we'll get to that. But all in all, I think that she's actually an 8. And she definitely has that 9 wing, right? She is much more calm, stable, steady. She doesn't get upset easily. Like she's pretty steady the entire time. But what was so funny for me and what kind of sealed the deal of her being an 8 was when she first meets Gus And her reaction to him in the group, it's so funny, right? Because they walk in, bump into each other, then they're sitting in the group together, and he's kind of like giving her the eye, and she's like, what of it? Like she's kind of giving him some attitude, which I think so funny. And then when she hears Gus talk about, his fear is oblivion, she's like, oh my gosh, this guy, she's like, this dude is just so full of it. Like, I'm over this. And she pushes back. And what I think so funny is most types, especially with like an opposite sex kind of situation, I think you'd be a little bit more nervous to do that because you want to make a good impression. And obviously she thought he was cute. Obviously she was kind of into him when they bumped into each other and the cute music started playing. But oh, by the way, cute music. You need to listen to the score for this movie. It's incredible. One of my favorites. So yeah, she has like this boldness and this air of confidence that I think Gus actually really loved. And the fact that she did push back, I think is what actually made him like her even more. And so, she's a very much a challenger, which if you don't know, the type 8 is called the challenger. And then a couple of other things where she's very blunt and straightforward, but she's kind. Like she's not being blunt and straightforward out of a mean-spirited kind of way. She says it because she's just like, look, this is the situation. And she says it and it's done. She's not trying to invoke emotion. That really stood out for me when they were talking at the doctor's office and they're like, oh, she's got to be depressed. Like, this has to be the case. And she's like, I'm not depressed. This is just a situation. Like, I'm dying. It's sad. We're moving on. I'm not depressed. And so anyone else in that situation, I think, would have gotten very nervous or irate. And she was just like, bluntly, no, I'm not. The last thing that I think really stood out to me for her being an 8 is when they're in the Anne Frank house and you can tell that she is struggling. But you know what? She keeps going and going and going and pushing herself. And most people wouldn't have, or most, I should say, most other types probably wouldn't have the stamina to do that. She has built up this really incredible tolerance for pushing her boundaries, and she wants the experiences. And that's what's interesting about the 8, right? Their passion is lust, and it's not in like a, wink wink nudge nudge kind of a way. It's a lust for life, it's a lust for experience, it's a lust for fullness of life. And so for her, she's seeing this and she's like, this is my one chance to see the Anne Frank house. This is amazing. I need to do this. Even if they don't have elevators, I have to push myself. And the funny thing about it is Gus asks if he can carry something for her and she says no. But then when they're in the house and what is her name? Levi, I think is her name. She was like, can I carry something for you? And she actually lets her, which is so funny because the 8 doesn't want help from anyone in their inner circle. They're probably more than likely going to take help from a stranger before they take it from you because it's like a sign of weakness and they never want to appear weak. Like that's their fear, right? Is appearing weak. And so she didn't want Gus to view her that way. But Levi was like, she's genuinely helping because she doesn't even really know me, but like she wants to help. And so that's where she does let her help. And we see that she continues to push boundaries that entire time. And she does like bite it a little bit. She's finally like, man, I think I overdid it, but she still keeps going. And that's a testament to the 8 character. And then I chose a social subtype for her because you see throughout the movie, all of the decisions she makes are based on her circle, right? So for instance, she says several times that she does the things that she does simply for her parents. She's not doing it for herself. And if she was a self-preserving subtype, she'd be doing it for herself because she'd be looking out for what do I need? Do I have everything covered? Blah, blah, blah. The social subtype is very similar to a type 2. They're definitely like aggressive and blunt and powerful like the 8, but they have those 2 qualities. And remember, 8 goes to 2 in health. And so the social 8 is really pulling from that 2 more than the other 2 subtypes. And we can see that that's where she gets like some of her tender heart. And I think that's where potentially she could be mistyped for a 4. But at the end of the day, girl is an 8 wing 9 for sure. And then our tri-type really quick. I actually want to do live tri-types with you. I have not thought about this, so we're just going to do it together. For her, so she's an 8. I think in the heart triad, she is definitely a 4. And then for the head triad, I'm going to say she's a 5 because we see that she loves to read the same book over and over and over. And remember, fives love their niche topics and their niche interests. And so she reads this book, but you see, like, she's had a bunch of stuff highlighted. She's circling things. She's really digging deep into it. She's not just reading it and going, well, that was a nice book. She continues to dig more and more and more and peel those layers back to get to the essence of the book. And that feels so five-ish to me. And she also enjoys routine, which is something that fives love because it's safe, it's comfortable, and they can kind of get the most out of it, if that makes sense. So again, for Hazel, she's an 8-wing-9, a social subtype, and her tritype is an 8-4-5. Okay, so Gus. Oh my gosh, sweet Gus. What a gem. I don't know about you, but Ansel Elgort, if he's in it, like, I'll watch it. I think he's fantastic. So this character is probably like one of the most lovable characters I've ever seen. I knew there was a 4 in this movie. I just didn't think it was Hazel. It's Gus. And I actually have a very hot take on this. So we'll get to that in a second. But I think Gus is a 4 with equal wings. I think he uses his 3 and his 5 perfectly because, of course, the goal is to be using both of your wings equally in different situations. That is what you would like to attain. And I think, honestly, all of these characters do. I just genuinely think they all have kind of like jumped ahead in life because they don't know what's happening the next day. And so they all are just like, we got to figure this life thing out and quick. But Gus is like the epitome of a self-preserving 4. And if you've never heard me talk about self-preserving 4s, they're referred to as the sunny 4, and they come off very 7-ish or very 2-ish. And so for them, you almost don't know that they're a 4 because this type of 4, basically, they've dealt with a lot of pain, and usually it's early in life. If you've never read Beatrice Chestnut's book, The Enneagram Guide to Waking Up, she has this little story in the beginning before each type, and she talks about how the 4 does deal with some sort of early, I don't want to say trauma, but an early disruptance. And so it shapes them. And, of course, kids that are dealing with illness, it does shape you. And it's hard because everything kind of becomes about that illness. And so part of the time you wonder, are they really this type? Or were they made this type based on their circumstance? And I think that's kind of the chicken and the egg situation for all types, but I'm just throwing that out there. I think because he knows any day could be his last, I think he really has decided that he doesn't want to live in this painful state of mind. He's got enough pain going on. So he's really been like, you know what? It's sad. I acknowledge it. I understand it, but I'm going to just like move past it because it's not helpful for me to stay here, which is obviously the journey that the 4 takes, is getting to that point where they acknowledge the pain, but they can still go on without that ruling their life. And so Gus is a prime example of a super healthy 4, a self-preserving, healthy 4 who has learned to manage his pain emotionally and has learned to channel it in different ways. Now, the reason that I actually decided that Gus was a 4, and I had a bit of like a crisis, like half the way, and I was like, shoot, is he not a 4? We'll get to that. But what stood out to me the most about him being a 4 is when they finish up the first support group meeting where he meets Hazel, and they're standing outside together, and the whole cigarette thing, oh my gosh, hilarious. And he has these obscure metaphors. Like, he enjoys these oddities. And Gus looks at everything in life through a different lens than like 99% of people. He, especially with that cigarette, decided, I'm going to take power back where power has been taken from me. And he views things through such a different lens where it's like, wow, that was really a powerful statement. But he says it in such a way that it's almost like the power's lost. And yet I was still impacted. This is the most random thing. I'm like trying to describe this for you, but this is, such as the life of a 4. That didn't even make any sense. You know what I'm saying, basically. 4s are just like in another world. And it's so cute to see how he just takes things as they come. He really does. And he is fully himself 100% of the time. He never pretends to be anyone other than exactly who he is. And he doesn't care if you like it or not, but he's still gonna like try and dazzle you a little bit. And that's where I think he leans on that 3-wing, because 3s are known for that dazzling, especially when they have a 4 with them. So like if they're a 3-wing 4 or a 4-wing 3, they can tend to do the dazzling thing, and they're very sure of themselves. They say things and it's like, am I right or am I right? And you're kind of like, you are right. Yes, I'm tracking. And so I think it's really cute to see that whole scene with him and Hazel because you see both of their personalities so clearly. You see her being such an 8, you see him being such a 4. And the other thing that just really took me for a ride, and I was like, this is it. He is a 4, is when he's in that support group meeting and he's talking about how his fear is oblivion. He wants to make a lasting impact. People don't realize how much 4s want to make their mark on the world, especially they have that connection to 1. 4s and 1s want to leave a legacy. They want to be remembered. They want to impact this world positively. And it's not for the sake of vanity. They want to do it because that's their purpose in life. That's their mission. And so for them not doing that, and we see that towards the end of the movie, cue Funky Bones Part 2. We see that at the end of the movie where he's basically saying, I've reached the end of my life and I haven't made the impact that I wanted to. And that was where Hazel comes in with that incredible 8-wing 9 wisdom. And she says, it's not about how many people you impact, it's about how big of an impact you have on the people around you, because you will be remembered with them. And I think that's kind of where 4s and 1s get caught up in the big picture view. And I think they don't realize how much big impacts on a small group makes. And so when she tells him that and delivers the truth like an 8 does, he gets to kind of cut through the feelings part and see it for what it is. So she's really great at balancing out for him the real situation versus what he feels. And that's where that 8-4, I mean, I don't see a lot of 8 and 4s together, but in this particular situation, you couldn't ask for a better pairing. And so, long story short, Gus wanting to make an impact was kind of sealing the deal for me that he's a 4. And I'm looking at my notes here. Yes, I want to talk about really fast his tritype. I feel like that whole thing about Gus was so random. I'm so sorry. I just think that character is so special and unique. And of course, hallmark words to describe a 4, but I just think it's so cool. Like, I've never seen a character like him, and I want to be able to really eloquently say something, but I can't. I'm just like so excited. Anyways, his tri-type. So again, Gus is a type 4, and he has a connection to 5 through his wing. So could he be a 5? Sure. But I'm going to say he, from the head triad, is actually a type 7. Now, this is where I had a bit of an issue. I mentioned earlier, partway through the movie, I'm like, wait, is he not a 4? I was like having this identity crisis thinking he was a 7 because the way he acts, especially when Isaac is going through his breakup with what's that girl's name? Starts with an M, Monica. He's like, buddy, you're going through it. Like, let's just get you right out of it. Like almost let's not acknowledge the feelings and just like move you right through it. Because obviously that's the way that Gus has learned to do things because he's been living in this constant thing of kind of despair, which is awful, but he encourages Isaac to quickly feel it and then get past it. And that for me was like, is this different? Is he actually a 7? Because that's a very 7 thing to do. But I think in reality, again, the self-preserving 4 comes off very 7-ish. And so I think not only is he a self-preserving 4, but I think he does have a 7 in his tri-type. So he's coming off very 7-ish in a lot of this. And also his humor and his way to charm people and get them, especially when they're throwing the eggs at Monica's car and her mom comes out and he just quickly comes up with the story and makes her mom go, you know what? Yeah, like I'm just going to let them throw eggs at her car. That to me was like such a 7 genius moment. It's also a little bit 3-ish because he's leaning on his 3-wing there. And then from the gut triad, I'm going to say he's an 8. I think he's a 4-7-8. That's a crazy tri-type. Like that tri-type holds a lot of power. They have all their cards on the table and they go for it. And I think that's really what we see with Gus. He's like, you know what? Life is what it is. And I'm going to make the most of it. And I'm going to be myself. And it is what it is. And I just think that's the most incredible thing to see someone in that bad of a situation be that free. I mean, I'm not in that bad of a situation, and yet I'm not that free. I need that. So I think that's what we can all learn from movies is actually seeing how to get through tough times and come out triumphant, because it's so easy to get caught up in the minutia. It's so easy to get caught up in pain, but it all works out. Learn to be that 7 that's like, you know what? I'm just going to like be in the moment, move on, and do my thing. Okay, let's talk about Isaac to round things out. Okay. Okay, I have a major hot take here. I think he's the most underrated character of the entire movie. If you see the scene where he's eulogizing, oh my gosh, it's so upsetting, where he's eulogizing Gus. Is that a word, eulogizing? I think so. Yes. Anyways, he is so freaking funny. He is just a riot. And the fact that he intros the whole eulogy by like making a joke and saying Augustus Waters is one cocky SOB. It was just the best thing ever. It just brought me so much joy. And I think someone in that circumstance to be able to come out the gate swinging like that at like such a depressing situation really speaks to his character. And that's where I halfway wondered, is he a 7? Because the whole time he's very much like going back and forth between a 7 and a 2, and like what is going on here. But at the end of the day, I decided that he's either, because we don't get to see too much of him, you know, like I don't feel like I can get like a really good read on him, but from what I saw, there's two options here. He's either a 6-wing 7 or a 7-wing 6. And I say that because he makes jokes the entire time and kind of has this like, oh my gosh, the part where Hazel's like, hey, Isaac, how are your eyes? He goes, oh, they're great. The problem is they're just not in my head. I lost it laughing. Like I was watching this at like 11 p.m. and I'm over there cackling. And I think the only types that could really keep that kind of liveliness and that kind of humor going, especially because that's like kind of dark humor, the only types that could do that would be a 6 and a 7. And again, because we don't get to see too much of him, I think there's room for interpretation of whether or not he's a 7 or a 6. And the reason that I mentioned thinking that he might be a 2 is because 7s and 6s can mistype as 2s. And especially if you don't know too much about them, like if you were to just meet them on the street, you could often mistype a 6 or a 7 for a 2. Again, you know, I'm looking at like, okay, when Monica broke up with him, what was the reaction? He definitely was sad, but he was just trying to distract himself, which is what 6s and 7s do. And he is extremely loyal. And he couldn't even get through his eulogy because he's over there like, I just got to go, you know, and he just has to move on. And he is another one that has really learned to deal with pain, and he does it in such a beautiful way because he brings this laughter and this lightness to things that are really taxing on people emotionally. And he's able to come in and he doesn't disrupt the situation. He doesn't like crack some big joke that would make you want to actually like really laugh out loud to the point where it like takes away from the sincerity of things. He's able to do it in this most incredible genius way that delivers the jolt you need of like joy and peace, but it doesn't take you fully out of a really painful situation. And the only time I think he did that was when he said Augustus Waters is one cocky, you know, SOB. I think that was very disrupting, but he knows when to make jokes like that that can disrupt, because when you open with something like that big, it kind of allows you to have a break from the intensity and to get back in the moment and not be so caught up in the feelings and the past. It allows you to be jolted back into the moment, I think. And he doesn't deserve what he got. You know, I think he's so funny. I would have loved to have seen him more in this movie. And if you've read the book, maybe he's in there more. I don't know. And if you've read the book, please let me know what you think the types of the characters are, because I know a lot of times book and movie characters are different. I mean, in my Twilight episode, I had to do 2 separate typings for all the characters. All of that to say, if you have different types for them, let me know on Instagram. You can DM me there at Dude I Love That Podcast, or you can DM me on my personal at Hey It's Liv James. But again, if he is a 6, he has a 7 wing. If he's a 7, he has a 6 wing. And I definitely think for his tri-type, again, debating whether or not he's a 6 or 7, but one of those. And then from the gut triad, I'm going to say he's a 9. He has that very 9ish reaction when he breaks up with Monica, and he's kind of holding everything in. And 9s are actually the most angry type on the Enneagram. Did you know that? It's crazy, but you never see it because it takes a lot for it to actually come out. And I think for him, you don't see it come out until he's like busting all of Gus's trophies and he has a total meltdown. And so he does want to keep the peace. You know, he wants to not be a distraction or a disruption. He just wants to kind of be there. He just wants his friends. He just wants to be happy. And he wants his video games. Like, who can blame him? And then from the heart triad, I definitely think he's a 2. I think a 792 is like the cutest little type. I just think it's so precious, and they are amazing, amazing friends. And so again, even if he's a 692, precious type as well. Anyways, I hope that you love this episode and that you love this movie as much as I do. And be sure and check back on Friday for a brand new episode. We'll be doing another Shailene Woodley movie, which I'm so stoked about. So be sure and catch up there and make sure and follow along on Instagram. That's where I hold polls. I talk about all the new episodes coming out. And every episode, I do like a vibe post, and it's so much fun. So it's like the vibe of the episode. And I find really cool vintage photos that you have probably never seen before. So be sure and check that out there. Be sure and DM me any requests you have for episodes coming up. And remember, summer sessions for Enneagram life coaching are still going on through the end of July. So be sure and check out the Instagram post right here for all the info. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.